good, the true, the beautiful, in everything we find. Aesthetic Club, we strive to make a world that's kind and bright.
Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock on December the 9th, 2025. It's our fourth meeting of the year, of our 143rd year. Please, as always, silence your cell phones, put them into airplane mode because that facilitates lens recordings. I did not have any names of any guests unless someone slipped by me. No. Please sign the guest book, or our attendance book in back. If you're not here and watching online, please text to Jeanette Hamilton your name and the fact that you have viewed today's program. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? I know of one correction. The one correction Ansha told me is important, that the Firehouse Museum, which I misspoke and called it the Firehouse Hostel, is in fact the Firehouse Museum of Arkansas. The hostel part is they're no longer having students there because of visa issues, international issues, and that's a problem for them money-wise, but it also makes them sad that they can't invite students to stay there. Our chairman of hostesses today is Jan Burford, and we have wonderful decorations. Would you like to come and tell us about them?
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Chairman, fellow aesthetes. My name is Jan Burford. My fellow committee members are Marilyn Porter. Also providing items for design today are our two presenters, and I'll let them discuss that. And Sangra Mangan, and anybody else raise your hand. I had more help than I expected. I was so excited. We have endeavored to provide decor today to both illustrate the meeting's theme of creativity and create a holiday atmosphere, because this is our only December meeting. On the table against the wall to your left, we've got some holiday decorations, which is a way many of us express creativity in our homes and offices at this time of year. Have a couple of books with creative holiday decorating ideas and a cookbook with ideas from a much younger Martha Stewart for creative menus during the month. Have a couple of Christmas-themed games that a family might play together after opening presents, and some textiles. Also on the table are 3 elderly carolers, symbolic of all the members of this club. I didn't mean the elderly part. I'm one of them, so you know. All of the members of this club who express their creativity through music. I'm blushing. Sorry. All right. Should have practiced my remarks out loud. Maybe I'd have caught that one. On the table to the right of the podium, our speakers have brought props to accompany their papers. I'll let them talk about that. We've also got some articles that recognize the creativity of so many of our members expressed through their hands, such as quilting, knitting, sewing, writing. On the mantle, we've got a couple of paintings that recognize all the members who express their creativity through art. These are 2 paintings I did for my Christmas decorations at home. One illustrates Bob Cratchit and Tiny Tim in church, which was alluded to in the Dickens Christmas Carol. Remember, he came home with him on his shoulder from church. And next to it is a painting of my father, nephew, and my dog carrying a tree into a winter background, which I copied from a Christmas card. Many of us use Christmas cards sent to us to add to our decorations. So I hope in our decor we've been able to illustrate the theme of today's meeting and bring a little holiday cheer into the room. Thank you.
At our December meeting, we always present the check that the club gives to the museum, recognizing the fact that we're taking up their space, all the work they do for us, and all the work that they do behind the scenes for us. So, Tracy, would you like to come up? And Stephen McAteer is the executive director of the museum. This is one of my favorite meetings of the calendar year. You know, it's a pleasure to thank Stephen McAteer and his wonderful staff for all their help and support that they give us throughout the time we're here. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Aesthetic Club began meeting in the Little Rock Arsenal in 1894? Yes. And we have letters in our lockbox from the City of Little Rock and also from the Arkansas History Commission giving us the right to meet in the Arsenal in perpetuity. And this is a privilege we do not take lightly, believe me. It's always a joy to enter this historic building and be greeted by the smiles of your staff. And they help us in ways that I don't know that are too countless to recall right at this moment. But we thank you and your staff for all the work you do for us. It's a pleasure. And here's a check to you representing our members' contribution for $1,710. Thank you very much.
Madam President, members of the Aesthetic Club, it's always a pleasure to stand here before you, and not just because you're giving me money. I particularly appreciate the fact that you choose this meeting to make your annual contribution, because it is the holiday season, and what says holidays more than tradition? We're all on our minds right now, the traditional decorations that adorn our households, the traditional foods that we dust off those recipes and try to replicate from years gone by. And I appreciate the tradition that the Aesthetic Club has with this building, the historic Arsenal building, which you are correct, you have been meeting here since 1894. So just think about that. 131 years of your 143 years have been spent in this building. And the steps that you came in, the door, the steps upstairs, they're the same steps that hundreds of Aesthetic Club members before you have made, including all but a few of the past presidents whose pictures adorn the wall behind us. So we appreciate that tradition. I appreciate the contribution as always. And on behalf of myself and my staff, we wish you all a happy holiday season and look forward to seeing you in 2026. Thank you.
And you all may have noticed the Thomas Hart Benton exhibit downstairs. We are listed as sponsors of that from part of our contribution. So you should all take credit. The quote of the day is, creativity is intelligence having fun, attributed to Albert Einstein. What a clever way to describe creativity, especially as Einstein was known for his brilliance. Maybe he wished for a break from his science in order to be creative, or maybe that was what he used to visualize the physics concepts that he was theorizing. That thought occurred to me. Our chairman of the day that I have the opportunity to introduce to you is Julie Hardy. She's very creative and very clever. She's been an aesthete since 2020, serving on the program committee and serving in the last series, 23 to 25, as our vice president. Her paper presentations have been on surfing and rap music. She's always creating, first at Magnet Cove High School, where she grew up, later at Henderson State University, where she studied fine art and graphic design. In New York City, during her husband's medical residency, she worked with people who were awarded for their costume work on Sex and the City and The Devil Wears Prada. A highlight what occurred in her career in 2007, when she was showcased on a Martha Stewart program, making a necklace that she designed to go with one of her dresses. It mirrored one sold by Louis Vuitton for $800. Hers cost $3. She said New York City was great fun, but life there is just as fast and complicated as the Devil Wears Prada represented it. She much prefers the quiet, refreshing life here in Little Rock. And I have one more announcement before I call Julie up. I was told that Star Mitchell and her husband will be guest musicians at the second Friday art night at Curran Hall. This Friday, 5 to 8. They will be playing traditional holiday music on a hammered dulcimer and fiddle. Excuse me. Free complimentary beer and wine will be there, and there'll be a crap food truck. Julie.
The quote of the day is, "Creativity is intelligence having fun," by Albert Einstein. Einstein's success comes from his enthusiasm for challenging status quo. I too love to challenge status quo. There was a meeting earlier this fall where people talked a lot of smack about wearing white shoes after Labor Day. And today I'm wearing white shoes to drive you all wild. Show you that. Our first presenter is the club's first member born in the 90s, the 1990s. Jane is 31. Like me, Jane Madden is an only child and a Pisces, so we really hit it off. This paper topic, Textile Tales, was a pleasure for her as she studied art history, and she is very well traveled. Jane told me she is most creative in the kitchen. She loves to cook. Jane went to Central High School, then St. Andrews in Scotland. Because the curriculum at St. Andrews, she graduated with an honors master's level degree in art history and English. After university, she worked in publishing in London, where she worked on the Illustrated London News. Like a good only child, she moved back home around COVID time. Jane is recently engaged to her fiance, Grant Poole, and they're buying their first home together. They are planning a wedding in the south of France. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you, Julie. Madam President, Madam Chairman, fellow aesthetes, and guests. A few weeks ago, 3 different girlfriends of mine, a Texan, an Arkansan, and a Californian expat living in London, asked me if I had any sort of canvas look in mind for a gift. I genuinely did not know what they were talking about. And then I realized, oh, needle pointing. They want to needle point me something as a wedding gift. At first I thought, wait, am I that old now? But then I started paying attention and I realized this is not just me. This is an entire movement taking over Gen Z and young millennial women. Young women everywhere are gathering for happy hours, not just for cocktails and gossip, but specifically to needlepoint together. Which got me thinking, how did we get here? How did we go from textiles as survival, something our great-great-grandmothers did out of necessity, to textiles as the trendiest hobby on TikTok? To understand where we are now, we need to go back to understand where textile work began in the South, and particularly here in Arkansas. For women in the 19th and early 20th centuries, quilting, knitting, and needlework weren't hobbies. They were survival. In the Delta, where winters could be harsh and resources were scarce, quilts meant warmth. Scraps of worn-out dresses, flour sacks, old shirts, nothing was wasted. Women would gather for quilting bees, social gatherings where multiple women would work together on a single quilt, sitting around a large frame and stitching in unison. These bees served a dual purpose: finishing quilts more quickly and creating community in isolated rural areas. A woman's skill with a needle could mean the difference between her family staying warm through winter or having to make do with threadbare blankets. The resourcefulness of Arkansas women when it came to quilting was remarkable. Batting, the layer between the quilt top and backing that provides warmth, wasn't something you could just run to the store and buy. Women would grow their own cotton and hand card it for use as batting. But even that was not a luxury everyone could afford. Some quilts used pine needles, newspapers, feathers, or burlap sacks as batting. Tobacco bags served as backing material. Nothing was wasted because nothing could be wasted. Every scrap of fabric, every worn-out flour sack, every old shirt that couldn't be mended one more time, it all went into the quilt. This was not Martha Stewart style crafting. This was making do with what you had to keep your family warm. What's important to understand is that this knowledge was passed down mother to daughter, grandmother to granddaughter. Learning to quilt wasn't an optional hobby. It was an essential skill, taught as soon as a girl's hands were steady enough to hold a needle. These weren't just practical lessons in sewing. They were lessons in resourcefulness, patience, and community. The quilting bee wasn't just about getting work done faster. It was where women gathered to share news, offer support, celebrate marriages, mourn losses, and maintain the social fabric of their communities. In many ways, the quilts themselves became records of women's lives, each scrap a fabric of memory, each stitch a moment in time. But something shifted in the 1970s. A generation of women artists looked at quilting, needlework, and embroidery, these domestic crafts that had been dismissed as women's work and therefore not serious art, and said, actually, this is art, and we're going to use it to say something. Enter Miriam Schapiro, a feminist artist who became fascinated with quilting and its intersection with Southern traditions, African American quilt practices, and Appalachian textile work. In 1972, Schapiro co-founded the feminist art program at Cal Arts with Judy Chicago, and together they created Woman House, a collaborative art installation that transformed an abandoned Hollywood house into feminist works of art, turning kitchens and domestic spaces into political statements. It was around this time that Schapiro coined the term femage, combining female and collage to describe artworks made from fabric, lace, needlework, and quilt patterns. It was a deliberate reclamation. For centuries, women had been creating these intricate, beautiful works with their hands, and the art world had ignored them. Schapiro was determined to change that. Shapiro's femage pieces were bold and unapologetic. She would layer fabric, doilies, handkerchiefs, and embroidered textiles onto canvas, creating works that celebrated the decorative patterns and domestic materials that had been deemed lesser than by the male-dominated art world. One of her most famous works, Anatomy of a Kimono, created between 1976 and 1977, was a massive 52-foot-long painting and collage that incorporated fabric and referenced traditional women's clothing. But it was not just Schapiro. Faith Ringgold was creating story quilts that combined painting, quilted fabric, and text to tell narratives about African-American life and history. Judy Chicago's The Dinner Party in 1979 featured elaborate needlework and china painting, traditionally feminine crafts, to honor 39 notable women throughout history. These artists were using their grandmother's mediums to challenge the patriarchy, and they were forcing the art world to take notice. And while these feminist artists were making waves in the art world, traditional textile practices were quietly being kept alive here in the South. The pine burr quilt, a distinctive three-dimensional pattern made with folded triangles, was a treasured tradition among African-American quilters, particularly here in Arkansas. By the early 2000s, the pattern was sadly nearly extinct. Betty Ford Smith, an educator who fell in love with these quilts at a craft festival and apprenticed for 6 years with a 92-year-old African-American quilter named Miss Sue, took interest. Each king-size pine burr quilt takes 3 to 5 months to complete by hand and can weigh over 25 pounds. When Miss Sue passed away in 2010, Betty made it her mission to keep the pattern alive, teaching hundreds of women and exhibiting her quilts widely. In many ways, Betty's work echoes what Schapiro and her contemporaries were fighting for: the recognition that women's textile work is art, that it matters, and that it's worth preserving. Which brings us back to my friends asking about needlepoint canvases. Fast forward to 2025, and suddenly needlepoint is everywhere. Not just in my text messages, but all over TikTok with hashtag Whip Wednesday, which stands for Work in Progress Wednesday, where young women are posting updates on their current needlepoint projects. Right here in Little Rock in the Heights, Gracefully Stitched Needlepoint just opened its doors, offering canvases with Taylor Swift lyrics and designs that say things like mahjong and mimosas. I have some examples over there. In a way, you could argue that it's not that different from what Miriam Schapiro was doing in the 1970s, taking a traditional craft and filling it with contemporary references and modern imagery. Shapiro's femages celebrated women's domestic work while making bold, current statements. These new needlepoint canvases are doing the same thing in a way, just with pop culture instead of politics, except you can find those too. This is not your grandmother's needlepoint. And it's not just needlepoint. It's cross-stitching, embroidery, knitting, crocheting. All these crafts that seemed decidedly uncool when I was growing up are now the hottest hobby with young women. So what happened? How did we get here? I think COVID had a lot to do with it. When the world shut down in 2020, we were all stuck at home, no matter our age, scrolling endlessly on our phones, watching the news nonstop, and desperately searching for something, anything that felt tangible and real. Enter the cottagecore aesthetic. Suddenly, everyone wanted nap dresses and sourdough starters. The dark makeup and bodycon dresses of the early 2000s were out, replaced by billowy cotton fabrics and what became known as the clean girl vibe. Women started making their own jams, baking bread from scratch, and yes, picking up needles and thread. There was something deeply satisfying about creating something with your hands, something you could hold and see and touch after spending months absorbing constant digital doom from our TVs and phones. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets really interesting to me. What was once a creative outlet born out of necessity has now become a very luxurious hobby. Those Arkansan women using burlap sacks and old newspapers as batting, many of them were quilting because they had to. But today, a 6x6 needlepoint canvas can cost $150 or more. The specialty threads, the custom designs, it all adds up so quickly. And seriously, do you know how expensive it is to even have something as small as an ornament finished? I have an example somewhere over here. There are entire services dedicated to just the finishing alone. We've romanticized the craft completely. Women are spending hundreds of dollars on supplies for something that, 100 years ago, was often about making do with scraps. It's fascinating to watch how full circle we've become, with textiles as a means of survival to now a fashion statement. But it's not just textiles. Mahjong, which we'll hear about in a second, has had the same resurgence, another grandmother activity that's suddenly cool again, with the same friend groups gathering around tables with matching sets and custom tiles. What these crafts have in common is that women have made them cool. They've taken hobbies that were once seen as outdated or overly domestic and transformed them into social experiences, creative outlets, and yes, Instagram-worthy moments. My friends aren't gathering to needlepoint in silence. They're gathering to talk, to laugh, to be together while their hands are busy creating something. In a way, they're recreating those quilting bees from the 1800s, just with cocktails and contemporary canvases. From the Arkansas Delta to TikTok, from necessity to feminist statement to trending hobby, textiles have always been about more than just thread and fabric. They've been about women gathering, creating, connecting, and claiming space. Whether it was those quilting bees in isolated rural communities, Miriam Shapiro forcing the art world to recognize women's work as legitimate art, or my friends meeting for happy hour with their needlepoint and mahjong towels in tow, the thread that connects them, is this. Women using their hands and their creativity to build community and make meaning. The mediums have changed, the price tags certainly have, but women gathering with needle and thread to create something beautiful while building something even more valuable, connection, community, and legacy, that tradition is alive and well. Thank you.
That was great. Dr. Julie Cheek is a new member who was brought to our club by her piano student, Jan Shorey. I didn't have to ask Julie where she is most creative. She's a classically trained pianist and an avid knitter. Julie enjoyed a career as a cruise ship entertainer for many years. Her first job sent her on a 3-week voyage to New Zealand. She would perform 2 concerts in a 14-day period. Julie broke a couple rules by skipping out on her senior year from Mount St. Mary to begin college at Indiana University. Then she skipped her senior year of college to move to Vienna. After a year in Vienna, she returned to Indiana University, where she completed a master's, then earned her doctorate at the Eastman School of Music in chilly Rochester, New York. Julie is the youngest of 8 children. Their mother taught all of them how to play the piano. Julie and her 2 siblings performed as the musical Cheek Children in this very room for this same club when she was around 10 years old. Too bad we didn't have Lynn back then. Julie enjoys a life of travel and fun with her partner, Vince Insulaco. Julie will introduce her own program.
Thank you so much, Madam President, Madam Julie, Chairman, and all of my new fellow esteetes. Hello. I'm so used to saying ladies and gentlemen, I have to be careful that I don't get to do that during this club, for cruise ships, that is. I'm going to start with a piece in the textiles, under the textiles subject. I chose a piece by Franz Liszt called, well, it's by Schubert first, transcribed by Franz Liszt, called Gretchen at the Spinning Wheel. And I'm not a fan of saying to people what pieces are about, especially when they are instrumental pieces. They can be about anything you want them to be about. But in this case, Liszt has taken a song by Schubert that was sung. And so what happens when he transcribes it for piano solo, he puts the vocal part and the piano part all together in one. Well, what do we lose? We lose the words. And so this one does have a theme. So I'm just going to take a second to tell you about it, and then I'll get right down to playing. I'm sure many of you know the Faust story, the story of the man who sells his soul to the devil in exchange for eternal youth. Well, the main female character in that was Margarita, and a nickname for Margarita is Gretchen. And so Schubert has taken this text and turned it into a song about how she must have been feeling when he loved her and left her. Because, you know, he had all this youth and he didn't want to be tied down, and so she's brokenhearted. So just picture Gretchen, Margarita, at the spinning wheel. And the way that Schubert set the music is what's so clever about it, and this exists in the vocal form. This is literally how the piano part goes, which is around and around. And then she sings. That's her part. Meine Ruhe ist hin, mein Herz ist schwer. Meine Ruhe, my peace is gone, my heart is heavy. Never, never again will I find it. Whole thing in German. She goes on and on. When he is not here, life is like the grave. My whole world is embittered. If I leave the house, it's only in the hopes of seeing him. You know, this girl's got it bad. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, at one point, she goes into a dream mode. You'll hear that in the middle of the music when it's all in minor. I don't know if that means anything to you. But suddenly the sun comes out and it's in major keys. And when that happens, she's saying, oh, his eyes, how they'd sparkle in his hair, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And then, and oh, his kiss. And right at kiss, those aren't wrong notes. So she's kind of embittered by that kiss, remembering it, and then she comes out of her dream and starts to spin again. So that's Gretchen at the Spinning Wheel by Schubert-Liszt. Well, it wasn't 1892 when I played here, but it almost was. I so remember coming up the steps and sitting right here and being Linda Trapp's guest. I don't know how many of you knew the Dame Linda. We should call her Dame Linda Trapp, but it's funny how things come full circle. If you had told me that, oh, I'm not going to tell you how many years later, let's just say 60 plus, I'd be back here playing for everybody. I never would have believed it, but I'm thrilled. The next pieces are under the category of games people play, and for that I chose two of Debussy's pieces from Children's Corner. This is the cover of the book. He wrote this for his granddaughter, who was only 3 years old at the time. He called her Choo Choo. And the first piece that I'm going to play is about this elephant. And instead of calling him Jumbo, he called him Jimbo. So this is Jimbo's lullaby, and they're trying to get this elephant to fall asleep. So that's the first piece I'll play. The second one is about this. It's called Gollywog's Cakewalk. I bet all of you know it. A gollywog was a doll that looked something like that. And you probably know what a cakewalk is. Do most of you know what that is? There seems to be a misunderstanding about those. You know, it's not something that you walk around chairs and when the music stops, you're sitting in front of the cake. That came so much later. Cakewalk was the early form of ragtime, and it was pre-Civil War, and it was when the slaves were making fun of their slave owners by putting on a dance where they imitated them. And they did these side-by-side processions, you know, like this, where they were imitating what they had seen their slave owners do. And who were the judges but the slave owners? Well, little did they know that the slaves were probably making fun of them. But they were doing this dance, and there was a grand cake in the back of the room, and whoever imitated the best or did the best dance steps took the cake. So that's where that came from. So Jimbo's Lullaby and then Gollywog's Cakewalk. And I'll finish off with something that has nothing to do with anything except that his name is Roger Quilter. And I thought, okay, close enough. So it's called Now Sleeps the Crimson Petal. Okay, so now you know why I just had to do it. And it's not Christmassy, but it kind of is. And I never play it once, although today I'll play it only once. I usually play it 3 times in a row because it's very short and very beautiful. But that's what I'll end it with today. Thank you.
Such a wonderful slate of presenters today. Melinda Martin is another new member. Her paper is The Games People Play, but she herself is a rule follower. Melinda was perfect for this paper. I asked where she's the most creative, and she responded, in entertaining. She is enjoying the Mahjong craze and loves hosting her group and delighting them with seasonal fare. She was in a bunco group that met for 25 years, and she's a certified yoga teacher. Melinda taught Chelsea Clinton how to play solitaire when she was Chelsea's nanny. Melinda is a graduate of Little Rock Central High and the University of Arkansas. She studied early childhood education and worked as a kindergarten teacher until her children were born. She has 2 grown children thriving in medical careers. Her daughter Marley is a pharmacist who is expecting a baby boy. And Melinda also has a son who is doing a medical residency at Tulane. She has been married to her husband, Eddie Martin, for 34 years.
Hello, everyone. It's a hard act to follow. Madam President, Madam Chairman, and fellow esteetes, my paper is titled The Games People Play. This topic resonates with me deeply because I always enjoyed playing a variety of games. Today, I will focus on Southern parlor games, including canasta, bridge, mahjong, and bunco. All of these games provide a sense of tradition that Southern women have continued since the turn of the 20th century. The definition of a Southern parlor game is any type of game played indoors. Usually these games were played in a parlor, a place for entertaining, or more recently, in a living room or den type area. Parlor games have remained important because they provide a form of social interaction and connection that is independent of technology. They offer a way to engage in mentally stimulating activities without screens or any other technological device. So regardless of the weather, this is Arkansas after all. It could be a snowstorm or it could be a heat wave. Women can still get together and enjoy face-to-face interaction that requires logic, quick thinking, and most importantly, fun. An article in Southern Living magazine from June of 2025, Betsy Cribb Watson describes these games as, quote, involving social interaction, storytelling, creativity, and lighthearted competition, unquote. My first experience with parlor games was on beach trips with my family. We would gather around a table with snacks and drinks, appropriate, of course, for each age level of drinks, and we would have and play all types of games. It was an important part of my childhood, and the tradition still continues with my children today. One of the oldest and most beloved parlor games ever played is the card game Bridge. I'm sure many of my fellow esteetes have been involved in a bridge game at some point. Bridge was developed from an older card game called Whist that was developed by English nobility in the 17th century. Both games are 4-player trick-taking games that are played with 52 cards and divided into partnerships. Bridge is more complex due to a bidding phase where players communicate hand strength to establish a contract. Whist's objective is just to win as many tricks as possible. Bridge has several variations, include auction, which began in the early 20th century and introduced bidding to the game to determine the trump suit. The idea of contract bridge was invented in 1925 by Harold Vanderbilt. an American on a steamship cruise. He established standardized rules and scoring of the game, and this version is the most popular today. Modern bridge offers variations such as duplicate, that's played in tournaments, and rubber bridge, that's played in a more casual setting. Bridge can be an important bonding experience for friends, neighbors, and family members, particularly when it's passed down from one generation to the next. My mother-in-law learned to play bridge from her mother in the late 1940s, and I have brought her card set, and you can tell which one is hers from the rest of them because it's older. After she was married, she and my father-in-law often played bridge with another couple for their weekend entertainment. They didn't have much money back then, and so bridge became their date night. The game is a perfect balance of fun and logic and is great for stimulating the brain. In recent years, the popularity of bridge has been on the decline due to other games such as mahjong, canasta, and bunco. These are my bunco earrings. Bunco is another popular parlor game which is played with 3 dice and involves rotating partners after each round. There are 6 rounds corresponding with the numbers on the dice. For example, the first round, the goal is to roll for 1s, the second round for 2s, and so on. A player wins a round either by reaching 21 points or by rolling a bunco, a 3 of a kind of the target number, and then you get to shout, bunco. I was in a bunco group, like Julie said, for 25 years before COVID hit in March of 2020, but then unfortunately after the pandemic, our group did not pick up the game again. Bunco is a fast-paced game that requires little skill other than counting to 21, making it an ideal activity for chatting while playing. The emphasis on luck allows the players to relax and connect with friends without intense focus. While bunco is often associated with women, it actually began as a gambling game played by various groups, including men. It was introduced in San Francisco, California in 1855 by a British gambler who made his way to America during the gold rush. Bunco parlors, or illegal gambling houses, were popular in the 1920s and Prohibition. Law enforcement tasked with raiding these parlors were nicknamed bunco squads. The first Bunco World Championship was held in 2006. It was broadcast on the Oxygen Network and was sponsored by Procter & Gamble to benefit the National Breast Cancer Foundation. However, in recent years, bunco's popularity has been overtaken by the rise of mahjong. This is my mahjong. Unlike bunco, mahjong does require skill, coupled with luck and creativity. It originated in China and is a tile-based game rich with symbolism depicting elements of Chinese history and mythology. I have brought a set today that my husband purchased in Beijing in 1990. Excuse me. Many of the tiles are missing and it's not in great shape because I let my children play with it when they were young. Who could have predicted that I would become a mahjong player 35 years later? I also brought an American set to display as well, so you can see the difference. Different regions and different communities across the world have their own variations of the game. For example, the number of tiles vary from 136 tiles, the Japanese version, to 144, adding 8 flowers to the traditional Chinese set, and then 152 tiles, adding 8 jokers for the American set. The game begins with each player receiving 13 tiles. The player must make order out of the chaos of these individual tiles to create a winning hand. In turn, players draw and discard tiles until they complete a legal hand by using the 14th tile. The National Mahjong League, founded in New York City in 1937, publishes the annual card that dictates the combinations that qualify as a legal winning hand. There are usually 50 to 60 such hands on the card. 4 women emerged from this league and helped determine the standard rules of the game. One of these women, Viola Cecil, was instrumental in producing the first ever annual card. It cost 10 cents. Today, they're about $15 a piece. Mahjong is typically played with 4 players, but can be adapted to play with 2 players called Siamese, or with 3 players plus an imaginary 4th player called Bob. However, most group of Mahjong players that I'm aware of are women, so I believe that the imaginary player could better be named Barb. The first documented appearance of Mahjong in the U.S. was in 1893 at the Chicago's World Fair. The game was formally introduced to the West by Joseph Babcock, a representative of Standard Oil living in China. He quickly realized that the game that had China under its spell could become lucrative for him. He began exporting the Mahjong craze to America by making adjustments to the game and making it easier to understand and play. The first Mahjong sets were shipped to the U.S. in September 1920, and within 2 years, the game became a smash hit in America. Chinese laborers could hardly keep up with the demand, and American cows even less. The tiles were originally made from cow shin bones. So shiploads of these bones from American slaughterhouses were shipped to China with the plea to return them as soon as possible in the form of Mahjong sets. Since the 1970s, the majority of sets are now made out of various types of plastic, including acrylic, lucite, and melamine. Mahjong is a game of both significant skill and luck. According to an article in 2024, Journal of Prevention of Alzheimer's Disease states, quote, playing Mahjong provides cognitive and social benefits for older adults like me, not Jane. These benefits include improved memory, cognitive flexibility, and slower rates of cognitive decline, end quote. Seems to me these benefits extend to people of all ages, not just older adults. And finally, Canasta is another popular parlor game that's beginning to gain popularity again because it is a more time-efficient alternative to other games such as bridge and mahjong. Both bridge and Canasta are partnership games. They rely on teamwork and communication. Canasta requires 2 decks of cards as compared to bridge's single deck. Canasta is generally considered easier to learn and quicker to play than bridge. Canasta was developed in 1939 in Montevideo, Uruguay, by Alberto Serrato and Segundo Santos. They were originally bridge partners looking to develop a game that was less time-consuming than bridge and less dependent upon chance than rummy. After World War II, Josephine DeVille brought the game from South America to New York. The game may be played by 2, 3, 4, even 6 players. However, the most classic version is with 4 players and 2 partnerships. It uses the 2 traditional decks of cards plus 4 jokers. Melding is the primary way to score points. A canasta is a meld of 7 or more cards of the same rank. A team wins by being the first to reach a predetermined number of points. Women began hosting canasta parties in the 1940s in America. The New York Times ran a story March 26, 1956, titled, quote, Husbands, tired of beans, canasta game raided, end quote. Apparently, husbands were feeling neglected by the popularity of the game and they needed to voice their concerns. Although the craze quieted in the 60s, it was revived in the 80s and 90s and is still enjoyed by card lovers today. In conclusion, these highly popular games, bridge, bunco, mahjong, and canasta, continue to charm players with a mix of strategy, luck, and especially social interaction, reminding us we do not need to be entertained by our handheld devices or any other technological gizmo. It's more important to be influenced by real human interaction. The quote of the day by Albert Einstein: creativity is intelligence having fun. And that is exactly what playing games provide. Our minds, a space to engage our minds, build relationships, and have fun. So I challenge each of you to step away from your TVs or any other gadgets, gather some friends, neighbors, or family members, and play a game of your choice. I guarantee the experience of social interaction, along with a healthy dose of friendly competition, will bring you joy, just as it has for generations. Game on.
Seeing as there's no further business, the meeting is adjourned.